Plant-based Singaporean street food, culture and history, everything I love all in one place. So we are waiting for our Grab to go to our vegan food tour today. Super stoked, it's part of my birthday present. And it's gonna be 4 hours of eating, 12 different stops. Can't wait, we're ready, we got our fat pants on. One big splurge during our time in Singapore was to go on a walking vegan street food tour of Singapore that had a cultural and historical aspect as well. And wow, it was incredible. It was truly epic. We had so much fun. We met amazing people and we learned so much about the history and the culture of Singapore. Also, this street food tour I would say would be perfect for both herbivores and omnivores. It was just epic all the way around. So I want to show you guys a little bit of what we learned. Let's take a brief stop in History Corner. We're just going to do a 30,000 foot view of Singaporean history. So Singapore belonged to the Malay Kingdom for centuries, and in the 19th century the British kind of set their sights on Singapore as a potential port to open up their trade in Southeast Asia. So in 1819 the British arrived to establish the port after striking a deal with the Malay king at the time, and this kind of jump-started the cultural and economic growth of Singapore. Fast forward a few years, and in World War II, the Japanese actually occupied Singapore. After World War II, the British once again regained colonial control of both Singapore and Malaysia. In 1963, Malaysia won their independence. So at the time of independence, Singapore was actually part of Malaysia. So Malay and then SI in Malaysia stood for Singapore. So kind of a fun fact there. Due to some ideological differences, in 1965, Singapore actually broke from Malaysia and became their own country. While all of this was going on, there were a lot of immigrant populations that immigrated to Singapore and became integral parts of the fabric of Singaporean society. There are 4 big subcultures that we explored during our food tour. We were all within the district, the neighborhood of Joo Chiat, and so the 4 subcultures were the Indian subculture, the Chinese subculture, the Malay Arab subculture, and then a whole new subculture called the Peranakan subculture. So that's kind of the order we're going to go through in our video today, so let's jump right in. Our first stop was the Indian quarter of the Joo Chiat neighborhood. And when the first census of Singapore was taken in 1824, Indians actually already made up 7% of the population. The interesting part is that a lot of these folks came from the southern part of India. So getting to try southern Indian food was a new experience for Tucker and I. Usually when we go out for Indian food, we try more kind of northern cuisine, things like dals and masalas. So getting to try something new was super fun. And to the Udupi Ganesh Indian Cafe, which was actually located right next to the Ganesh Temple in the Joo Chiat neighborhood. At the cafe, we got to try steamed rice and lentil idli cake with 3 different dipping sauces. These dipping sauces included coconut chutney, tomato chili chutney, and lentil curry. All 3 were super delicious and packed full of flavor. We also got to try the potato curry samosas with a tamarind dip, and everyone said it wasn't going to be that spicy, but for me it was really spicy. Still super delicious, and the flavors were so great, but Tucker particularly liked these. And then finally we got to try a freshly squeezed lime juice, which was delicious on such a hot Singapore day. And just one more tip. If you're trying to stay fully plant-based, Southern Indian cuisine tends to use a lot of ghee or clarified butter in their dishes, so just be sure to ask for them to not use that specifically when going out to eat. Next up, we went to the Chinese quarter of the Joo Chiat neighborhood, where we got to try thunder tea rice. So thunder tea rice is a very traditional cuisine in the Chinese culture. The mythology of thunder tea rice comes from warriors who were on the road during the Han Dynasty. The warriors who were on the road either needed food that was easy to transport and easy to cook up, or something that they could gather there on the ground. So the thunder tea rice is actually made up of 2 parts. The first part is a green tea. So they literally use green tea leaves as well as other herbs that they could gather in the area. And this is where the thunder part of the name came from. When they were there pounding all of the herbs, getting them ready for the tea, it made a sound like thunder. Then the second portion is kind of the dried goods or the easily prepared goods. So these were things like rice, green beans, peanuts, dried radishes, and then traditionally they would use maybe dried meats or something like that, but for our plant-based version, we used seared tofu, which was great. So when you're ready to make your dish come all together, you pour the green tea over the dry good portions and you stir it all together. Then we added things like chili sauce to the top, and everyone thought it was super delicious. It was unlike anything we had ever tried before, especially with that green tea portion over everything. It would be a super easy meal to make at home, so I'm thinking about making an all plant-based version and maybe filming that once we get home in the late fall, so stay tuned for that. Next up was the Arab Malay Singaporean sector, and the Arab Malays make up about 15% of the Singapore population. So to try their cuisine, we went to the Geylang Serai Wet Market. And at the market, we get to try two different specialties. The first of which was a traditional curry puff, and this was a little bit too spicy for me yet again. Do you sense a theme here? But Tucker thought it was absolutely delicious. And then we got to try a traditional dessert called putu piring. So putu piring uses rice flour, which they pack into these stainless steel molds, at which point they add dates and the cover before steaming it all together. Once it's done, it's ready to pop out of the mold and absolutely devour. It was unlike anything we had ever tried before, just the perfect amount of sweetness from the dates, and it was absolutely delicious. So the last culture that we explored is also the biggest as far as amount of food that we tried on the food tour, and that is the Peranakan culture. So Peranakan is actually a term for the mixing of other cultures together. So this isn't a derogatory term in any way. Especially back in the day, if someone from, say, the Chinese subculture and the Indian subculture got married and had a family, those children would be known as Peranakan, or a mix of other cultures. And the Peranakan culture really grew to be something that's so unique and special about Singapore specifically. So the first Peranakan specialty we got to try was the popia. So popia literally translates to thin pancake, and they are not kidding when they say thin. Thin here means 1 millimeter thick. These guys are true masters of their trade. They actually start training as early as age 11 to be sure that they can hold the dough just right and then disperse the weight evenly onto the burning hot cast iron in order to get such a thin pancake without actually burning their hand. It was truly a marvel to behold. Popia can be stuffed with a variety of different things. There are a few common through themes. The first is a chili paste. This is usually really spicy, but absolutely delicious. The second of which is a simmered citrus-based sauce. So usually they get a lot of citrus fruit, sometimes things like avocado, and it simmers all together for 5 hours or more in order to get the perfect consistency and tangy taste. The thing that is common usually among all popia is the main filling of steamed potatoes, turnips, and jicama. Since we were making a plant-based version, we added all sorts of other delicious and fresh vegetables to ours, things like cucumber and lettuce, before wrapping it all up. We got to assemble and wrap our own, which was super fun, kind of special highlight of ours. The final product is like a super delicious Asian burrito. It was seriously so good, a flavor combination I had never tried before, and I can see why this is one of the most popular street foods in all of Singapore. Next up was Loving Hut. So Loving Hut is actually a chain of vegan stores that have a bunch of different locations throughout the world. And their mission is actually going vegan for the environment. So they include a lot of mock meat in their dishes because their idea is to maybe attract a crowd that wouldn't normally eat vegan, but give them something familiar enough that they will come and try it. First dish that we tried was another Singaporean favorite, laksa. So laksa can be made many different ways, but there's usually always a spicy curry coconut milk base with thick wheat noodles. Now the traditional laksa includes things like chicken, prawns, fish, things like that. And so our version at Loving Hut had mock meat versions of these. And boy, was it super delicious. Super rich curry, complex flavors in the broth, and luckily not too spicy for me this time. Next was the char kway teow, which is another maritime Southeast Asia specialty. Thick, flat rice noodles in a dark chili soy sauce. It actually reminded us a lot of a pad thai. It was absolutely delicious. And then finally, we got to try a Malay-style tamarind broth mee siam, which also had a Thai influence. This had a spicy, sweet, sour, light gravy. So next we tried Peranakan desserts at Kim Chu Kueh Chang Boutique. So when you hear the word kueh, it actually means cake. So whenever you're in Southeast Asia and you see that, just know it always means desserts. So here we got to try the onde onde, which is a rice flour and Javanese sugar ball filled with date syrup. It was super delicious and sweet. We also got to try the 9-layer kueh lapis, which is a steamed, colorful cake. They actually used to judge how well this cake was made by how many layers you could actually separate off the cake. let's just say it was extremely labor intensive. And at the end, we got to try our favorite, butterfly pea tea. Now, we usually always had this iced when we were in Thailand, but I must say the hot version was just as delicious as the cold version. While we were at the boutique, we also got to see the distinct Peranakan style artwork. So the Peranakan culture actually developed their own very special style of beadwork. This beadwork was showcased on things like shoes and pillows, as well as wall casings. It was extremely intricate and extremely beautiful. It was also really fun to see how all of these different cultures kind of melded together to form a new type of artwork. So believe it or not, we actually did quite a bit more than this, but I'm going to stop the video here for 2 reasons. One, I don't want it to be like 4 hours long, and 2, I want you to go to Singapore yourself and try this wonderful food tour. So Veg This City, they have a couple different tours you can choose from. It was so much fun. So I hope from watching this video today you A, learned something new, and B, were inspired. Singapore is not a cheap city by any means. We could only actually afford about 2 days there, but if you're ever in this region, it is most certainly worth a stopover. So thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, it'd be a huge help if you liked this video down below, and if you want more content like this, you can subscribe to this channel. You get more plant-based eating and more travel every week. So thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you beautiful people in the next video. Cheers from the Sears. We just got back from our food tour. It was so good. It was delicious. We ate so much good food. It was honestly epic. So I hope you enjoyed it as well. And now we're off to food coma.